All right, guys, we are live with another live stream here tonight, a special live stream. We are going to be talking about the coronavirus yet again. And so it should be a really great live stream. I know we had definitely a great live stream last night. I know a lot of people really enjoyed it. And so I have here today, I have Dustin, which we all know him, Dustin. And we have Logan, a good friend of mine, Logan. And we are going to be talking about the coronavirus. We're also going to have Pastor David Berzins that we're going to be talking to, and also Pastor Jason Robinson. And many more people, hopefully, if they call in. We're just waiting to hear back from some other pastors. But if this is also going to be a call-in show, guys. So if you want to call in and talk about anything, just tell what you think, or if you have any special insight into the virus, call in at 480-465-1203. That phone number will be in the description of this video, hopefully. And so check that out there. But I appreciate everyone tuning in. Should be a great live stream. So, Dustin, what do you got for us, man?
Yeah, if you want to, you can go back to yesterday's stream on Framing the World on YouTube. So we had Pastor Anderson here, and also Pastor Boyle, Pastor Jonathan Shelley, Pastor Tommy McMurtry. They were all on either here in the studio or on the internet wide, the Skype, or calling in. So we got a lot of different perspectives, a lot of back and forth as far as dialoguing between these gentlemen about what churches are doing, what they're doing specifically for their churches, maybe what the biblical way to respond to what we've seen in the last, I guess it was about almost 2 weeks now since the coronavirus has been in the news, and people have been shutting down businesses and shutting down, jobs have been shutting down, or flights have been cut back. I don't know exactly to what degree. I don't know how many flights. I hear airplanes are virtually empty. People have been running into the stores, lining up to go to the stores, taking all these storage items, whether it's rice and beans and eggs and toilet paper and all these staples. People have been stocking up, so there's definitely been a response. And we've all seen it, and we also have a lot of statistics coming across the news as far as how many people in each state are affected and who's suffering, different age groups and different demographics. So, definitely everybody's acting differently. I was just at a wedding today, so it wasn't like any wedding I'd been to, because everybody wanted to shake hands, but nobody shook anybody's hands. So it was interesting. You wanted to congratulate the groom and give him a handshake, but you couldn't do that. And so it was a little bit different. There was no food, and so we got to get together and watch the ceremony, but there wasn't. It was the social interaction. There was definitely a space between people. So we're seeing that happening. We're seeing. I'll just talk about my perspective. So, I have a job where I see hundreds of people every day, and I encounter different types of people, and some people are just typical, like they're not acting any different, but a lot of people you can just definitely see they'll step out of the way and kind of walk on the other side of the path from you. And so it's a different experience that I've never seen in my life, but it's very subtle. And obviously the conversation is about what everybody thinks is going to happen. A lot of people are speculating. Maybe not in an everyday, like not in a professional environment. People aren't saying, well, the government's doing this and the government's doing that. It's just more like, or hey, has business been affected for you, and that kind of stuff. But, when it's friends and people in social circles, you have a lot of people talking about, well, where is this going to end up? And especially in the Christian community, and people who are more libertarian, or people who are a little bit more wary of the government, or people who do not like the government's hand in their personal lives as much. So you hear people talking about, well, the National Guard, forced vaccinations, they're going, and then this is the next thing. So there's a lot of speculation going on. So people are standing around having conversations or interacting, but they're not even shaking hands, but they're talking about where this may lead. So it's a surreal type of time for us here. And so we know a lot of people have a lot of feedback. I haven't met anybody who's been sick from the virus. And we got Pastor Jason Robinson calling in right now. I don't know if he's on video.
Well, we'll do his test later.
Okay.
Since we've already started.
All right. Well, I just wanted, this is the test, so I don't have a video. I'm just going to leave him on there so we can see that.
Well, I'm going to go. So, guys, we also have Pastor Berzins that is now here with us. And so I'm going to introduce him, and we'll get him going here and hear his opinion about the coronavirus. And so, Pastor Berzins, you hear me?
Hey. Yep, I can hear you just fine. You got me?
Awesome. Yeah, you sound great. So just what's your opinion about this? I haven't really heard you speak on it yet, and I know there's a lot of different opinions about this. So what is your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, I had a chance to listen to most of your show last night. Not all of it. There's some parts I missed for sure. And there's a lot of great points made. And I haven't come out publicly saying anything, mostly because, like many people are saying, I'm ignorant on a lot of the details and the facts. So I don't feel like I should just come out and just make a proclamation about the coronavirus when I honestly don't. There's a lot of things that I'm looking at and I'm just going, I just feel like we don't have all the information. Whatever that is, nothing. Things aren't adding up for me. The hype isn't adding up for me. The scare isn't adding up for me. The toilet paper isn't adding up for me. There's so many things that you can see happening, and it's just kind of like, I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. So I haven't come out publicly and say anything. I've told my church already the stand that we're taking within our church is that we haven't changed anything other than cleaning a little bit better and trying to keep just reminders of personal hygiene and stuff that just makes sense if there's disease going around. But other than that, I've informed our congregation that if they feel like they're at risk, there's a threat, there's something going on, if they don't take even the same opinion I do, so by all means, stay home. You can check into our live stream. I told everyone to make up their minds for themselves and do what they deem to be appropriate, because I don't have all the answers. So you can't look to me for all the answers on something that I don't have the answers to. So that's kind of the approach I've taken. I'm still not convinced of the deadliness and, how horrible this is, and especially with all the various reactions to it. I don't see it. It's not computing in my brain. It doesn't make sense to see all this hype. That's kind of where I stand on this. You guys, there's a lot of great points brought up last night, and if you want, I can keep on monologuing. I got a lot of thoughts in my mind about this. But if you have a direction you want to take the conversation.
No, I appreciate that. And, that's where we're all at, is we just don't really know what's going on. But it just seems like a real overreaction to me. However, obviously this is a real situation that's happening. People are being affected. Obviously the older are at risk. And so, but, how bad is it in your state exactly?
It's not bad at all. I don't have the current numbers, but I think there was maybe a couple hundred cases and like 3 or 4 deaths or something. It's probably gone up a little bit. This is from like a day or two ago. Our governor hasn't made any mandates, so we don't have anybody shut down at all, other than the mayor of Atlanta has shut down restaurants and bars, I think. But they are allowed to, do takeout and delivery and things like that. So, We've also seen our Costco has taken steps to only allow a limited number of people in the store at a time, and you get about 20 minutes to shop. So they've been just reducing the, and I didn't go, my wife went. We're fine. We don't need to get a bunch of junk, and we're not hoarding anything. So, she's just going to pick up a couple things anyways that we needed. So I guess they're operating pretty well. I mean, they're doing a good job of keeping things under control there. But those are the types of things that we're seeing here. Most people that I talk to, whether it be at my job or within the church, kind of feel the same way. I mean, as I do. No one is really seeing the cause for all the hype. I've only talked to one person personally that is scared and kind of frightened and upset by this, and that was just someone that I work with. So most of the people are just kind of like, no one really sees the big deal.
Yeah. Now, are you still working at your job?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I know a lot of people are being laid off right now, and it's definitely a huge economic problem. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. So what is some of the steps you would implement in your church if things got worse?
Yeah, and because that's what I'm doing right now. I'm doing a take it as it comes, kind of play it by ear, see what happens. I don't really know. I don't have the next steps in mind. I'll tell you where I stand on a biblical view, because I heard a lot from different pastors, and before I even get started with that, I just want to say again, reiterate that I don't have all of the facts on this, especially with this particular virus. I'll tell you what I believe about, biblically speaking and governmental authority and stuff like that, because I do have opinions on that. But I don't have anything against any of the pastors that I've heard taking whatever precautions they're taking so far. They all sound reasonable for, each one and their situation to do. And this isn't, I'm not going to speak, in a judgment of anyone else being, doing wrong or whatever. Now, my viewpoint differs from, maybe a lot of people, maybe everybody. I don't know. Maybe my opinion is just completely unique. But it doesn't matter, because I think that it's more nuanced than anything. So what I was a little concerned about is just hearing things maybe though that are like, I don't like the broad brush strokes with anything, starting with the panic, people who just freak out over this news. That's not right to have this, just like, oh man, the world's going to end, or just kind of jumping to some real major conclusions and kind of going to extremes. And on the same hand, on the other side, just being extremely flippant, as if it's all just made up and it's no big deal at all. There's nothing going on. When it seems to me, based on the information I've seen, that, there's definitely something going on. There's definitely a virus going around, and there's definitely people dying from it. But it's the response that I'm seeing and the action being taken by government. Now, I do believe that the government has authority to quarantine, but again, I don't think that you can use that as a broad brush statement to just accept, well, anytime the government can, because the government has the authority to quarantine, they can just do it however they want, whenever they want, and we're not supposed to resist that. And again, using extremes as examples to the point I'm trying to get across here. Think about, the government has the right to put people to death. They have the right to execute people for crimes. Well, would it be, don't you think we should resist if the government started putting people to death for really, really minor violations of a law or statute, like you didn't mow your lawn, and it's this height and it's supposed to be this height and you're going to be put to death for that. So, it may be a silly example, but my point is that you can't just say because they have a certain authority that we just always have to follow that, and you can never push back on that at all, right? So when it comes to saying, well, the government has the right to quarantine, I would say, okay, biblically speaking, right, when you look in the Bible, and you can see the laws given in Leviticus regarding quarantining people. I think that's our guideline, and I think that's what we ought to be making our judgment call on, of what a government has the right that's given by God to do. So you have to, and obviously there's a lot of situations that can come up that aren't explicitly described in scripture, every little last detail, but that's why we have to understand the spirit of the law as well as the letter of the law, and kind of make our judgment determination based on that. And God knew that. He didn't write the laws with every single possible detail laid out to where it has an answer for every single situation that's out there, which is why he had judges and the priests, and to be able to interpret the law and understand the law and apply the law. So that being said, I don't think that the government has just carte blanche authority. I mean, let's just say there is a disease out there that let's just say that, and again, this may be a silly example. It's another extreme example, but just to illustrate my point, if the government said, there's this new disease and no one knows about it, and you haven't heard anybody reporting any deaths, you don't know anything about it, there's no statistics, and they said, but we're just going to quarantine everybody because it's in your best interest, and we have the authority to do this, so you can't leave, you have to, and just got real extreme on quarantining people. I wouldn't say that you just have to blindly accept that and follow that just because the government was given a right to quarantine people. That's why I think we have to look more closely at what does the Bible say. And when we see the examples of people either having a virus or suspected of having a virus for a good a disease, or leprosy specifically is what we see in the Bible, is there's very reasonable measures being taken when someone is suspected of either having leprosy or someone actually has it. And those quarantine measures, I think it's a very reasonable approach, and I think we should expect that the government, the authority given by God for the government to be able to do quarantines and shut people up in their houses for 2 weeks or however long, is going to have to be done in a reasonable manner with reasonable information with a reasonable risk. So my problem with this current disease is that, when you're quarantining someone who has a disease, to me, that's reasonable because it's holding back the spread of the virus, just as the person with leprosy would be quarantined to stop the spread of that as well. But when people are well and there's no evidence, no proof at all of having been exposed to any viruses at all, and they're completely healthy, then to me, that's where they're overstepping their authority to just be able to quarantine an entire swath, an entire city, an entire state, or whatever, right? That's where I think it's going too far. And, unless I'm able to see some evidence to point to say, well, no, this is very reasonable measure to do this, then I don't see how the government will be acting within their scope of authority. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Pastor. What's happening, it seems now, is that a lot of this is a voluntary type of thing. I know there are jurisdictions in areas like California, from what I hear, and New York, there's curfews and mandatory business closings, but a lot of it's just rhetoric, I think, as far as what the government's saying, hey, this may happen, we may have to do this, but we have not seen anything being enforced. Seems everything's like, at this point in time, has been voluntary, which if you consider the form of our government, it is a voluntary government. But talking about the government that we have and talking about the biblical perspective is the rulers that are over the people has to do with the spirit of the people. So that's where Romans, I think, where the Bible talks about that they have the authority given by God to rule over us is I think that if we're a righteous nation, we're going to have righteous rulers. And if our parents were wicked, we're going to inherit the rulers that they have bestowed upon us by what they've reaped. And so their sins and our grandparents' sins. So where we find ourselves today has been a series of events that have happened just by our nation being sinful, all of the just all of the deals our government's been taken, and all of the deals the people have been taken that have put our liberties aside so we can get certain things that the people are maybe convinced that they want, or they say that's good for them. So in a way, people are exchanging voluntarily their liberties, and the people who aren't willing to do that, I think a lot of people just always have this idea that they're just going to come and take it. They're just going to come and take it. So in their mind, they're expecting like they're just going to come make us do this. But right now, everything up until this point has been totally voluntary. So whatever any church does or whatever any pastor's doing, he's doing because that's his. He's doing that because that's his decision to make. Every man alive, not just leaders and rulers, everybody has to make a judgment of how they're going to respond to the facts that they're given. So that's why we got so many different viewpoints. You know, we hear your viewpoint, I've got a different viewpoint. Nobody's going to agree with anybody 100%. Unless they're just totally agreeing with the news stories, right? And it is so. That's where everybody's in agreement when they just take it hook, line, and sinker. But when we look, it's our job to be witnesses, because we're going to have to account for the decisions that we've made based on the evidences that we've seen. So we're going to have to look at the Bible and what the Bible lays out. And we're not doing what's right in our own eyes. We're seeing that this is a result of generations of sin. We see this as a result of what our parents have done and the way our country's got itself into debt. And the Bible says that that the debtor is servant to the lender. And so, you know, we would expect a lot of servitude to be occurring in this nation at the level of debt that we have accrued, right? So we automatically, instinctively think that they're going to come in and they're just going to take it by force. And they posture themselves, and I say, hey, it's just the government itself, the federal government, the state government, any of these levels of government, they have. And I'm not saying they don't do these things. Obviously, we've seen abuse of power, in our lifetimes. But in a lot of ways, we consent to this, and so there's times to fight, and there's times to just say, okay, I'm okay with it, and we know that maxim that when you give up liberty, you're not going to get it back, right? So we know that, if we just go along with it, then this is a temporary thing. And we've seen it way too often, and it's worldwide history of socialism that, when you give up your guns for temporary solution, you're not going to get those guns back. When you give up these, your freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press, freedom of practice your religion, you're just not going to get those things back. And also, one of the things I was thinking about this morning, one of those shower thoughts, is when they had in 1789, when the Bill of Rights was written, and they had the First Amendment written, saying that we have the right to peaceably assemble and they should not be infringed upon. Well, those fellows knew that there was such things as plagues at that time. So it wasn't written in, hey, what if there's a plague? We still have the right to decide if we're going to assemble. So not, besides just quarantining the sick, what about people just making a decision to assemble peaceably on their own? Like, what if I choose to assemble or to be with somebody who's sick? Paul wants me to take a phone call right now, but I wanted to get your take. I don't care about the phone call right now, but I want to get your take if you had anything back on that, Pastor.
I do. I agree with you, and on just about everything you said there. I think, obviously there's you brought up a lot of points. There's a multifaceted situation that we're in. There's a lot of root causes, I think, that lead up to things like this. And when you're saying that, yes, right now everything's voluntary, no one's like really mandating everything. I agree with that. I guess the point that I was trying to just cut straight to was based on Paul's question, like, well, what are you going, if things get worse, what are you going to do? And without articulating it, I was just thinking like, if things get worse, meaning like if the government mandates, hey, you can't have assemblies of more than 10 people, and I don't care, who you are. Now, you say that for the most part, everything has been voluntary, but, there are states that have been mandating. I read a story a couple of days ago from Louisiana, and apparently that there was a mandate there. And again, I don't know the validity of the story. I didn't do like a lot of fact checking, but apparently there was a church in Louisiana that held a church service, and they were running, a few hundred people, and the cops showed up because they weren't supposed to have assemblies of more than 10 or 15 or whatever their number was. And they said that if they have services the next week or the next time or whatever, that the National Guard was going to make sure that they weren't able to hold those services. So I don't think that everything is voluntary everywhere. So the reason I started going into, even just Levitical law is because as a Christian, I need to know where I stand on every law that exists, and I don't want to resist God-given authority. So if there's law, and again, you have to have some wiggle room. I don't think the government's ever going to get everything 100% perfect, and you have to be able to allow for things to not be perfect. But I guess the point I was trying to drive home is at what point, like, everyone has to have a line in the sand, right? There's got to be a line where you're going to say, well, this is just completely unreasonable and just not okay. And I think everyone's going to come to a different conclusion for that. But and I think everyone has. I haven't heard anyone really coming up with the same exact response to these questions. But that's kind of where I was going with it, was just to see, well, okay, well, if the government does, if God's given government authority to allow for quarantining people, what is the extent of that authority? Now, we know governments, even our government today, has gone out of bounds when it comes to their level of authority, and they've tried to control every aspect of your life. That's kind of the nature of human government, is to just continue to reach and overstep their boundaries. And some things you'll just do and go along with because it's not worth the fight. It may not be worth, just fighting every single thing that comes down the line. And at the end of the day, maybe it doesn't really have much of an impact anyways. But I am a believer in being resistant towards these power grabs at things that God has not given them authority over to do it. And when it comes to just, if it's, again, I think it comes down to just being reasonable, like, and to your point too about, don't we at least have the freedom? Like, if I wanted to go out and congregate with people, I thought I had the right to do that, even though there is a plague, shouldn't I still be able to? Like, I mean, how are you going to restrict healthcare workers from providing help to those that have a plague, right? I mean, now you can say, yeah, but they should still be quarantined from everyone else. Okay, I get that. And that would make sense too. I think that would be reasonable, but I don't know. I mean, we don't see the priest that goes in and checks on the leper. Are they quarantined from seeing anyone else then? The priest that goes in to check on them? I mean, these are all questions that I think we don't necessarily even have all the clear answers to. But I don't think anyone should be extremely dogmatic either, and that's why I give a lot of grace for and one of the reasons why I haven't made any real public statements about this stuff, because there is some gray area there, and
yeah, and I totally love what you're saying, and it's true, because it's all going to play out within the next week or two here. And so I really appreciate you coming on, Pastor. Is there any final thoughts you wanted to say real quick before we let you go?
We'll see what happens. right? We'll see how things play out. Like you said, I think we'll see within the next 2 weeks how things are going to end. I'm not expecting any major government, threats. I'm not planning on it. I don't even have a plan for what we're going to do if something like that were to happen. I'm just taking it day by day. And as we stand right now, there's really there's no perceivable risk in our area. We're going to continue soul winning. We're going to continue going to church, and obviously respecting people, respecting their boundaries, and trying to be wise when it comes to preventing a spread of disease. But at the end of the day, right now, I have yet to see evidence that's going to convince me that this is a huge, just some huge threat to that it would even warrant following the advice given by the government. So anyways, I appreciate you having me on tonight, and I appreciate you bringing all these people in. It's great to hear the different ideas and what people think about it. Obviously, it's on everybody's minds anyways, just because it's just kind of what's going on. You can't get away from it. This is what it's impacting literally everybody.
Yeah, definitely. So we have Pastor Robinson on the line here, so you can either stay and keep going with this live stream, hang out with us and chat, or you can take off too. It's up to you.
All right, I'm going to sign off for now. I appreciate you having me on. God bless you guys.
All right, appreciate it, Pastor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Pastor David Berzins in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you want to go check out his church there, they're still having services. So it's a great church, Stronghold Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. But we have Pastor Jason Robinson on the line right now. Pastor, how you doing?
Doing great. How you doing?
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on. And I know that a lot of people have different opinions about this, and I'm sure you are the same. You definitely have different opinions. So please tell us what you think about what's going on.
Well, like everybody has been saying, I mean, we're kind of all working with the same amount of information. I mean, if you want my personal take on it, I think that it's being overblown. I think it's being taken out of proportion. I mean, just some of the stuff that I've seen as far as the coronavirus compared to the flu. To me, it seems like this is kind of going a little haywire. But, hindsight's 20/20. So, if in the next month it just gets ridiculous. And I think Italy.
Paul,
Right.
you totally lost. Come down here.
All right, we lost him. We'll call him back on
brother.
the phone, the up here.
Yeah,
so
because your iPad basically it died on you there. So.
All right, guys. Well, these kind of things happen. I appreciate everyone staying in. We have Dustin here that's going to keep us going.
Well, I wish we had Pastor Berzins on the line because I wanted to keep talking to him because I had.
Well, he said he wanted to go, man.
Well, I know. Well, okay. So one of the things I've been thinking about, and what I forgot what I was saying. It's been bouncing around here. So, what Pastor Berzins was saying is that. Man, I wanted to respond to what he was saying, so I don't feel like.
Well, don't we have that phone call? Take that phone call.
Yeah, let's take this phone call. All right, that's the other thing. All right. Somebody's calling.
You have Robinson on.
Hey, thanks for calling. You're talking with me here, Dustin.
Hey, Dustin. Hey, my name is Christopher. I go to Stronghold.
Hey, Chris.
Baptist Church. Anyways, one of the things that, I see this a lot, everything that's going on. And the thing is I'm not worried at all about this, like at all. I mean, it is what it is, and the way I look at this, and I have children and a wife, right? And what I tell them is, look, the fact is God already told us how the end of the world is going to come about. And the fact is it has to make it there, right? I mean, there is a plan, there is a process that has to go through. And one of the things that out of this whole coronavirus thing that I think about is one of the things is that, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to go broke over this. A lot of people do not have savings. and they're not working and they're not earning money and they're going to lose their jobs and, they're going to have food shortages and all sorts of things like that. And the fact is that, what is this going to make people want to do? Well, what it's going to do is it's going to have them looking for a savior, right? Everyone's going to want a savior, except they're not going to look to the heavens, right, for Jesus Christ. What they're going to do is they're going to look to man. And I just think that this is part of the process that's eventually going to lead up to what is going to become, a one world government. You can't get people to buy into this in one fell swoop. So what you have to do is you got to, kind of slowly boil them like the frog. And I haven't heard anyone really mention that, but that's really that's what I think is really behind all of this. I think the coronavirus is real. I think it's a real disease. I don't think it's nearly the proportion that people make it out to be. But at the end of the day, this is the real ramification I think that's going to happen is people are going to want a savior. And, already looking at the news, people want bailouts. People want unemployment benefit. People are looking to the government to pull them out of this fire. And
right,
what do you think of that?
I think I'm gonna hang up now. I think you hit the nail on the head, Chris. One of the things that we forget to consider here is we're looking at the facts, but the biblical view on this matter is that the end game ultimately is to bring all of the power together in all of the nations into one place, and for the devil to go after the seed of the woman and after the saints in the end. So we know that that's going to happen. So when we're looking at this situation, are we automatically thinking that every noise in the night is just like, this is it? So we don't have to overreact to things, but we must watch, we must pay attention, and we must know that that's not out of the question. So when we see these things happen and we see more power being consolidated and all these things, whether we can correlate it to any particular part of end times prophecy, we just have to know that the Bible is true. So in a very general way, we have that, and a lot of the world doesn't have that. A lot of the world, they just are believing all of the programming, they're believing all of the Hollywood movie about every outbreak scenario, and how the movie stars figuring out the vaccine and all of a sudden stops the whole plague with the vaccine, and they've been programmed to see all of these things play out. But we know how it truly plays out. We know that there's going to be hard times, there's going to be real sickness, there's going to be real financial crisis. What God does with us individually, I think that comes down to truly what our faith is, and how we're walking with the Lord, and if he's using us. So that's our solution. These things are going to happen. So whether the Lord comes in 20 years or 40 years or 60 years, we still have the same remedy to what our objective is, and that is to do the work of the Lord, to stay in our Bibles, to keep praying, and to do all those things, because these things will happen. By the end times, there will be a measure of wheat and barley for a penny. So there's gonna be these things. There's gonna be death by the sword. So we know these things are coming, and we know that's going to happen. So we have to, being post-trib, we have to prepare ourselves for that. And so this could just be something where you get to see where you are. You get to see how strong your footing is, where your faith is. So that's where I'm looking at. I'm looking at my own heart and seeing how I respond. And so we have to see also, what we're doing. And we can't be dividing with our brethren over these matters at this time, because the strength is us staying together in faith and having that fellowship in the Lord. So we do have Pastor Jason Robinson here. I don't know if you were taking notes, Pastor, as to what you were saying and where you left off, but you were in the middle of a sentence. So carry on, please.
I was talking about Italy.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess Italy is the thing. If I were to look at something to say, hey, this could be a catastrophic event, is if you look at the numbers at Italy. So I can understand where people are coming from with this could be something that's very serious and that could cause a lot of deaths. So that being said, I mean, that's something that we don't really know. But right now, I think in West Virginia, there's only 8 known cases. It's obviously increasing each day, but I mean, we're not really dealing with it that much right now. So, but that's the question, does that, in the next week, does that change to where it's just this big epidemic that's going on? So, yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not, the virus, I don't think anybody that's talking on here is afraid of the virus, right? We shouldn't be. We should be fearing the Lord and not, that type of stuff. But at the same time, I think the big question is, what role does the government have? And I kind of, I mean, what Pastor Berzins was saying, I do believe the government has the authority to quarantine, but I more so, I kind of agree with him with the broad stroke with quarantining everybody, not just the people that are shown to have signs or even to look like they maybe have it. That's where I would say, well, that's, I wouldn't say that's where the Bible would stand on it. But again, it goes into the fact of you can't expect the government to be perfect or to know exactly how to deal with it the way they should.
Well, do they have the authority to quarantine is not the same question as do they have the power to quarantine? Because that's truly, we're looking at a government that has the power to quarantine us, and that's just a fact. Whether it's a biblical authority that they can righteously do this, that's besides the point, But that also will determine how we react to it. Because if we believe they have the biblical authority to quarantine, and then they quarantine us, then we'll say, well, this is what the government does. This is how governments do things, and we have they have the right to do it. So we're going to submit ourselves to the government. But what's shady is that if they have the power to do it, and then we don't believe, because since it's a gray area, or maybe nobody sees any evidence and we're being quarantined, and how about this? People aren't even looking at the Bible. You have a total a majority of the population of people who are not looking at this from a biblical, righteous government perspective, but they're looking at it as, why are you quarantining me? I haven't done anything. And so now what we're looking at potentially is people, besides just Christians, resisting that. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about. As Christians, we're not the fighting type. It's going to be other people typically who are going to fire the first shot that's heard around the world, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the bright side of a lot of this, meaning that let's say the government does overstep and the government starts throwing its weight around. I think this will be a wake-up call for America, because especially with the gun rights issue, because the argument's always like, well, what do you need all those guns for? And you're saying that the Second Amendment is to fight a tyrannical government. That'll never happen. Well, maybe it will, and I hope that doesn't happen, obviously, because that would be, something I don't really want to deal with. But at the same time, if that did happen, then that would be something where everybody's going to be like, well, remember that time that the coronavirus came around and the government, basically tried to take away our guns, like in Katrina or but my stance on it as far as the quarantining goes, I mean, if they're not trying to take away my guns and they're not trying to force vaccinate, and this is going to be a short-term type thing, here's the thing with that. I think it can only be a short-term thing if they actually want to go back to normal at some point, because you can't shut down all these businesses for months and then expect it just to rebound. I don't care how much money you throw at it from the Fed. I think if you don't tell people an end game, if you just tell people, hey, you're shut down until further notice, people are going to just be like, no, we're not going to do that. But if you say, well, we're going to be shut down for 2 weeks and then after that it's going to resume, I think people will kind of back that. But I think that everybody eventually, and I'm just talking on the wide view of it, not counting the Christians, but just every American is just gonna be like, no, we're not gonna follow that because you're not giving us light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. So, but yeah, there's a lot of factors in that. I know we're kind of going on to different areas in the conversation, but
Right. So we do have people calling in. I don't know if you're down for any phone calls coming in, to take any phone calls.
That's fine.
Okay. Well, they're not calling. I keep hanging up on people that call in because I really want to hear what you have to say. So, but we have been getting phone calls. So if we get any phone calls, I want to invite them to ask you any question or give you the opportunity to respond if they do have any questions. And so what people are fearing, what I noticed is that question that they don't know. They feel it's almost like not trusting somebody like around your yard or something, but they keep passing by and getting closer and closer. Or, I don't know if there's a good analogy, but you find somebody who's just moving closer and closer, and you look and say, "Hey, what's going on? What are you up to?" And they're like, "Nothing. I'm just moving. I'm just standing here, And then you turn and they're 3 steps closer, and you're like, "Hey, what is going on here?" Nothing. And then you find they got their hand in your wallet, reaching for your wallet. So obviously, if there's any sinister agenda, it's not going to be something where they just come in full force and just say, "Hey, we're here to destroy you." They're not going to come. So people are concerned because they've been wary of this type of thing, and they believe that the government's taking advantage of the situation, whether the numbers are skewed or whether they're in they're a demographic or a region that isn't even going to affect us. Is the government just using this as an opportunity to move closer and closer to plans that they've laid so they can move towards that? And so people don't know where it's going to end. And so there is this whole open-ended thing. And I think it is creating something in the minds of people where they don't know what's going to happen. Everybody wants to be positive and think, "Hey, we're just going to go right back to normal. And now that we have our pantry stocked, then we'll just get right back to business, and we'll just actually have, a pantry full of food, and I'll catch up on that work that I missed." And it was just, we can't really change the past, but we're onto it. But then there's also on the other side this thought and this fear that, so there could be tensions building, especially if people can't get their liquor, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I personally love that the casinos and the bars are all closed down. That's really the only thing that our governor has closed down in West Virginia. He made a big announcement. He said all the bars and all the casinos are closed down, and I'm like, man, that's great. And now he just came out with another speech and really didn't say anything. That's what I've heard. I didn't hear the speech, but basically everybody's complaining that he made a speech and basically didn't say anything that he was going to be doing. And so, yeah, I thought as of right now, as far as the governor goes, I mean, the only thing that they've closed is the casinos and the bars. Now, in Morgantown, I believe they put out a mandate that you can't have more than 10 people gathered together or you'll be fined like $500. But our church building's in Fairmont, so as of right now, I don't know of any mandate where the building's at for that. So we are personally still having church services. Unfortunately, a lot of our church members have just been sick with not the coronavirus, but just illnesses and all that stuff that are going on. So it's been kind of sparse just because of that. But as of right now, we still have church services going on.
Okay, so I'm looking in the chat here. A lot of people saying Italy is reportedly not testing people with mild symptoms, so hopefully it isn't as bad as it looks. That's Inspired by God says that. One person says the coronavirus is the devil's response to Pastor Anderson's influence. So, if you want to bring the devil out, just keep preaching the gospel. So that's what we got to do. And if that's what happens, so be it. And definitely Pastor Anderson has had a heavy effect on the preaching of God's word.
Well, and I saw an article about Italy, and here's the thing. What part do you believe? Because I just saw something where they were saying that basically some of these hospitals where anybody that died was being marked down as someone that died from the coronavirus. And but it kind of goes with that, and then they say, well, anybody that has some minor symptoms as being counted as someone that has the coronavirus or whatever. They're being left out. And so, yeah, maybe the statistics are not right on that. But that, like I said, Italy's the one that I would look at and say, okay, that could be bad, if it's true, if that death rate is true. So,
well,
yeah.
we really, we have to, because we live in such a small world where, instantaneously I can find out right now what's happening in Italy and what kind of numbers have happened today and where we at anywhere at any time. We can look this up. But we still forget that our world is the real world that we live in are the people that we're around every day and the things that we're doing and the effect that we can have on people. Now, we can talk online like we're doing right now, and this is what we're really doing, so this is a real thing. But a lot of times, people just get totally caught up in things, but we just have to react with the real interactions that we have, and we can take all of these things into account. So we do know that there's people responding and there's governments shutting things down and all these things are happening. So we have to act accordingly, so it's not a bad idea to respect people's, what do they call that? The personal distance, right? So we have to, during this time, and I think it's important, that we're able to do that. That's interesting is the phone was ringing off the hook and then now it's just totally stopped. So I guess they gave up, whoever it was that was calling.
We just leave them on the line, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and talking to us, and we definitely want to take some more phone calls, and if you could stay around and answer a few questions from people, but we really appreciate people's input, and so if you want to call in, it's 480-465-1203. That's 480-465-1203, and we've heard a lot of great opinions from different people about this issue, and so I appreciate all of those, and I definitely know it's definitely a serious issue. People are dying, so but I guess the question we're posing is it as bad as people are saying? And then farther than that is, what are they going to do to take away our liberties because of all this? And so I think it's an awesome topic. It's a topic people are definitely interested in. Do we have someone on the phone?
Nope.
All right, so 480-465-1203. Pastor, talk to us.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, too, that obviously with a lot of the pastors in our movement, some are taking different precautions as far as the either live streaming services or having services or kind of basically adapting to the situation they're in. So the one thing that is really annoying is when people get online and they start basically judging the pastors for what route they're going. And so I just want to almost just ask them, to stand in the shoes of a pastor of a church and when you have to make that decision. So I would just say that, that's one of those things that any of the pastors that I know and respect, whatever stance they take, I'm for them. So, and I think I look at it too, like kind of like we have 50 states in the U.S. and it's not a one size fits all. So depending on where you're at, how you deal with it, even if it's not a mandated thing or if it's voluntary, your area more than anybody else, and your people more than anybody else, and so I'm just putting that out there that to kind of give pastors some leeway when it comes to if they're either doing live stream sermons or maybe the door to door like I am. I'm holding back the door to door soul winning right now because we kind of got some negative feedback the past week going out door to door, and I'm doing more so soul winning. I guess social distance soul winning is the way I would call it. Calling people up on the phone, talking to coworkers, talking to people that are out and about. And so that's kind of the route I'm going with it right now. And so, But I know there's probably a lot of people that think I'm going to take the mark of the beast because, I stopped door to door for a couple of weeks. So I would say that is just give people a little bit of give people a break, give pastors a break on how they're dealing with it. So.
Yeah, and the severity is different in every state too. So, well, I think we have someone on the line here. Caller, you have a question?
Is that your phone up there?
Okay. All right, I guess they hung up. All right, well, I appreciate you talking about this, Pastor. It really is interesting, your take on this. What do you plan on implementing if it gets worse?
You mean as far as if they say, hey, you can't meet anymore? Or
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess I would probably go the live stream route as far as just live streaming a sermon to where people can watch it. I guess it depends on how long that lasts. And like I said, if it's across the board, like I said, I'm not really worried about that. I guess it is a hypothetical. I'm not really worried about that because I think the fact is that if this lasts for, let's say, a month, people are just going to be, especially if it's not happening, if there's not a big amount of deaths happening, I think people are going to just be basically like, no, we're done. Like, I don't think it's going to be something where the Christians have to step up and say, we're taking the lead on this, guys, and we're going to take it to the man. I think everybody in America is going to be like, we're done with this. We're done being told to stay in our houses. We're done with this because it's not something that we see as a threat. And so I'm more so looking at like, okay, in a couple of weeks, what is everybody saying, and how everybody's reacting to that, or how much of a stronghold the government's still trying to put on everything. So I really think that's just my belief. Maybe I'm completely off base, but I just think that it's going to be pretty quick because so many businesses are hurting. The economy's tanking, all that stuff. I think everybody's just wanting everything to get back to normal, whether the sickness is there or not. So.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a caller on the line?
No, they didn't come. They hung up. So whoever it was, they didn't stay on. So Pastor Robinson, one of the things that's definitely a point that you touched on is the pastor's role in this whole situation. Now, the pastor's not the boss of me. He's the boss of the church. And when I come to the church, it's his territory. He's the one who God has put in charge of that. So if I want to participate in the church, if I want to be involved in the church, I have to accept his leadership and his authority in that. But being an independent fundamental Baptist, I don't have to do that. I can go to another church until I find a pastor who I believe God is using in my life, because there's a reason for us to go to church. And that's so we can grow in the Lord. That's so we can have fellowship with the brethren. That's so we can serve Christ and get out there and to do the work. So one point I wanted to kind of bring up is just my own experience with this whole thing, because I could see, like, I have thoughts that come up and in response to how my pastor has done things. But my immediate reaction to the whole thing is, well, I'm not the pastor. I don't want to be the pastor. And God has, brought me here to Phoenix, Arizona by my own, I believe that I made decisions to be here. So I take accountability for the decisions I've made in my life, even if it was not all the best decisions. I take responsibility for the things that have led me to where I am. And that includes wanting to serve the Lord, moving across the country, bringing my family to this church so I can serve God. And I feel like I've been blessed by God by serving in this church. And so all of a sudden, when this type of thing comes up, I know that God is using the pastor to do what he's been doing with God's people all along. I believe that God's been using Pastor Anderson in my life to help me be a better father and a better employee, and to just be a better man by being an example, and also to expound the Word of God and being faithful and to sending me out soul winning. If there's not many churches you can go to where the pastor is going to send you out soul winning and equip you and give you all the tools that you need to do that. So when the pastor is making this decision, you have to know, well, if I was out on my own, then maybe I would do this X, Y, and Z, right? But being part of the church, I definitely acknowledge and recognize and respect the authority, because I believe God's using it. And that's when the church stays together and the church has that fellowship and that purpose, and we're a body together, and with the pastor being the general, the captain, as it were, it's better than people just saying, well, I don't agree with this, I'm not going to do this. So it's really important, I think, to stand with our pastor in any church that you're in, and respect him, help him implement what he's doing and his plan, it be an encouragement to what he's deciding to do. Because a lot of people, they walk over certain things, and this is a stressful thing, so it could totally cause people to just go, I'm not going to participate like I used to. I don't agree entirely with X, Y, and Z. So we just have to acknowledge the pastor's position, and that God has put us in that church and put that pastor in charge of that church. I'm going to take a call. Thanks for calling. You're on the air here.
Oh, yes, sir. My name's Jarek, or God's Soldier, as you may see me commenting.
How you doing? Is it Derek?
No, Jarek.
Hey, Jarek. How's it going? We got Pastor
All right, brother.
Jason Robinson on the line, too, also. So if you wanted to ask any question, he could definitely answer with us.
Everything's just like speculation questions at this point.
Right.
Yes, sir. How you doing, brother?
You can speculate with us here.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to say, just because you guys are pastors around the church, and because you have so many members, maybe you can do more services through the week. To limit numbers and keep people coming. But well, I tend to lean on more negative things, so I see this as the government's way of controlling this. You know what I mean? And keeping this going. Like setting up penny for a loaf of bread. Dave's wage for a loaf of bread. What do you guys think about those types of things?
All right, go Pastor Robinson. What do you think about the government using this as a way to maybe hike up food prices, or to make it so people can't afford food? Do you think it's something that they're trying to do to conquer the will of the people?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think it was Rahm Emanuel that said to never waste a crisis. I mean, you could look back at 9/11 and see like all the stuff they did with that crisis. So, I mean, it's possible, that this is, but I mean, 9/11, comparing it to this, you'd have to say it was like a man-made virus maybe that they did to cause all this economic unrest. I think that, there's evil forces that could be taking advantage of it, for sure. I mean, the Fed printing up money, all the quantitative easing. But I think some of this stuff can backfire, meaning that they go so far that it crashes everything and it falls on its face. So, again, it's all speculation as far as what's going on. I tend to not worry about that. I guess, I guess when it comes to all this stuff, I don't worry about things I can't control. And I think I understand where people are saying, well, we can speak out, we can say this or that, and that's all fine and good. But in the end, I wouldn't lose sleep over this because ultimately we can't control it. We can preach the Bible, we can do, that's what we need to be doing, is preaching the Bible and preaching the gospel, doing what we're doing, and let the chips fall where they may. But I do I think the government's doing nefarious things all the time? So that's not even a question. But are they always doing nefarious things? I don't think so. I think that we can't look at it as far as like every little thing or every single person that's in government's like some reprobate that's trying to kill us all. But it's one of those things where, of course they're doing evil things out there, but I don't know how far to take that. So,
I went in today, and one of the things I noticed, right, is sometimes it just helps to just act normal, right? Because it just seems like there is something clearly underneath the thinking of everybody's processes right now, and that's understandable because there is something going on worldwide, and many people are affected by it, directly and indirectly. But I just noticed that when I would go to knock on somebody's door, I would just be my normal self and just act normal, as opposed to saying, "Hey, I'm here, and I know you may want to step away from me." We don't have to get weird about anything either. So I think it's important for us to just be our normal selves, be aware of these things, but not to leave our normal behavior. Like, obviously, wash your hands and be more mindful of those things. But that's one of the things I noticed. And we did knocking doors. A lot of people, we did get a lot of conversations today. And so people were willing to talk to us, and we didn't hear about it from a lot of people. But some, clearly some people, we actually hit a 55 and over community as part of our route. So we did end up having some older people who were a little bit more standoffish, and even younger people who were just more tentative to talk to us because of the quarantine. So obviously we just said, okay, well, have a nice day, the same way we would take any other no. So you would want to open up the conversation, and I haven't really so I just feel like I'm personally gonna just try to act as normal as I can, and if I get sick, then I'll stay home, like I normally would.
Acting normal is always a good idea.
We got Pastor McMurtry coming on here. I don't know if he got clicked in. It says it's ringing to him, so maybe he's not. Pastor Tommy McMurtry from Rock Falls, Illinois, don't you?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have someone on the hold too, right, on the phone?
No.
Okay.
So there was, but I ended up leaving them in the wings there. So
I'll say this though, as long as you're not going over to him right now.
No. We're
I think a lot of people are looking for someone to hold on to, if that makes sense. Meaning that there's a lot of people that have anxiety, and they're just afraid of what's going to happen, whether it's the virus or whether it's the government. People are kind of on edge right now. And like you were kind of talking about being normal, people latch on to that, meaning that when they see someone calm and collected and not afraid, they almost grab to you and say, okay, this guy, he's not worried. And I think that helps. And that also gives opportunities for the gospel too, because they'll say, okay, why is this guy all calm? Why is this guy, collected and not worried about everything that's going on? And then that gives that opportunity to where you can be like, well, I'm saved, and you can get into that and get into the gospel and the fact that, that's why we can not have fear about all these things that are going on. So.
That's right. So we got a caller here, or you can unmute that, Paul. You're on the air.
Hello?
Yes. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. I had a question. We touched on it a little bit with last night's stream about what would happen if the government was to force vaccinations. And Pastor Anderson talked a little bit about civil disobedience, but I kind of wanted to dig a little bit deeper on this and get everyone's opinion. let's say this were to happen. I don't think it'll happen with this virus at this time, but I definitely think it's a possibility in the future. More specific, if someone did come to your door, let's say it was the police, and they wanted to force you and your family to get vaccinated, would you hide? Would you answer the door? Would you pull out a gun? Specifically, what do you guys think you would do in that situation?
Go ahead, Pastor Robinson. We'll let you answer that first. Did you want to go for the gun? Because I was thinking knife. He's muted.
I'll say this. I'll take it on a different level. If CPS came and tried to take my kids away, they're going to have to kill me. So that's my answer to that. I don't really understand how someone could let CPS take their children away from them willingly like that. That's just me personally. So, yeah, it would be war. But same thing with the vaccinations. Obviously, to put something into my children against my will, yeah, I mean, that's fighting words. So, obviously, I would try to do it the most peaceably way. I wouldn't be going for that immediately. You know what I mean? But I would make it known that it's not going to happen, and that it's going to be over my dead body that's going to happen. So
okay, unmute me here. Yeah, so you got to make those decisions in advance. So I've already decided that I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let my children go. Because we already have this whole forced vaccination. People are already encountering this with their children, where if they're in public school per se, or if they're their job or they have certain jurisdictions. So there is this thing saying that if you don't get this vaccination, you don't get this. So I know, let's just reel this all the way to the end, to the mark of the beast, where some people have speculated the mark of the beast is a vaccination. Well, the mark of the beast being a vaccination is enforced because you're given a choice. It's either take the vaccination, quote unquote, take the mark of the beast, or you can't buy or sell. So, and if obviously, or die, right? So, so there's a benefit in exchange for getting these. I think everything's contract. So they come along and they say, hey, if you don't do this, you're not going to get this. And so the first thing that's ever going to come along before a forced vaccination, where they force it on you at gunpoint, is I believe there's going to be, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to lose this privilege, or you're not going to get this benefit, or those types of things. And then the other thing is, whether it's the parent, they're coming for your kids. Let's just set that aside, because there's always a way to talk to people. So you kind of have to decide in your mind how you're going to respond. If you're just total fear, if you're just total, I don't know what I'm going to do, I'm just going to flip out. Let me just flip out now. I'm just laying in my bed. It's quiet at night. Maybe I've had a little too much coffee or something, but now I'm just going to start thinking about how they're going to force vaccinate me. And so I'm just going to get myself all worked up in a frenzy and run all these hypothetical scenarios, and I'm not going to do it. And then I'm going to hide the gun over here, and I'm going to hide behind the bookshelf for coverage, because we can totally go in this whole imaginary scenario in our minds. And to what benefit is it? All we have to do is decide, I'm not going to do that. So I know that the Bible says that when we're tested, that then when they bring you before the synagogues, and when they try you to give a testimony, or you have to rely on where your spirit is to how you're going to respond. So when you're in this scenario, you have to know what you believe and where your faith is and what's right and what's wrong according to what God has given you. Being your children in this case, or your body as the vessel and temple of the Holy Spirit. You have to make a decision of what you're gonna do, and then you have to make peace with what the result of your decision is. So when a CPS comes to your door, and I believe if this were to happen, that God's going to give you the words to say. God's going to give you a way out. I believe, maybe at the end when you have the rollout of the mark of the beast. Yeah, you do have a rollout. It's called death. So Hold on a second real quick. I've got to pass this message along real quick to these guys so we can get our next guest on the line.
All right. Well, we have
I'm
a caller
hold on
right
a second.
now.
Hold on a second, Paul. Stop. I'm still finishing my thought, Paul. So, but what I'm saying, friend, on the line here is that when when this comes down, you just have to decide you're not going to do it, and you have to know that there's a way usually to get out of it if you are able to peacefully do it. One of the things I've thought about with the vaccinations is, yeah, I'll take the vaccination. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to resist you. I'm not going to go down. I'll take it. If you would just take all of the responsibility, if you would just sign a waiver, or you would, saying that you personally are going to be responsible for any negative effects, right? So you don't fight it. You just come back with a counteroffer. I'll take it if you can prove to me that it's not going to damage me, right? I'll take it. I'm not here to argue. I'll do it if you can do that. But if they're gonna force it on you, then that's your number. Your number's up. So that's my take on the whole thing. So you have to be willing to, going back to the CPS thing, when they come to the door, say, listen, I'll show you my kids, no problem. You can talk to my kids, you can see my kids if you have a warrant, right? And so if they don't have a warrant, then it's on them. So sorry, that was a little bit of around the bend a little bit. I don't know if we got Pastor McMurtry on the line, but we've been trying to get him here. Is he here?
No, we have a caller though, so we'll go to the caller. Caller, do you have a question for us?
On the phone? Is he still here? Pastor Robinson?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I mean, just to add what you're saying, if the caller's not there, I think of Daniel, when he didn't want to eat the king's meat. Obviously, you're not going to go out guns a-blazing, right? When it comes to those situations. But obviously, in the back of your mind, you've already purposed in your heart this isn't going to happen. You know what I mean? So, like you were saying, I mean, there's ways to try to, peacefully get out of it. But ultimately, I'm not going to let someone hurt my children. So, that's where it comes down to. I'm not gonna let someone kidnap my children. And so I'd rather die before I let that happen. But at the same time, I'm going to peacefully, like you said, give counteroffers, all this other stuff as far as put the responsibility on them, make them have to deal with it. And then obviously in the end game is that, you're not going to let that happen. And ultimately, safety is of the Lord. So with all those cases, like you were talking about the scenarios, we've all done that, right? We've all had those scenarios where you're laying in bed and you're thinking about how you would handle the situation, where you're going to go, where you're going to flee to, stuff like that, if the government's after you. But ultimately, what I always do pray is that God takes care of it. And, when it comes to even the safety of my children, I'm always praying that obviously God would use me to protect my children. But ultimately, I pray that he would just make those people drop dead, that would try to hurt my children. So,
yeah, and having faith is making a decision not to trust in anything else. So when we trust in the Lord with our finances, or with our children, with our lives, these things that are totally out of our hands. Like obviously my finances, God's blessed me with a job, and he's blessed me with health, and he's blessed me with certain accounts that are paying for that I'm successful with. So I give the glory to God in that. And I just show up and I just do the right thing. I keep doing the right thing, and I keep showing up and doing my part. So I think everybody needs to do that. And I think that's where it is, because I'm like, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So when I know I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, I get a little afraid that maybe God's going to, make me scared a little longer, right? So when we're walking with the Lord and we're doing the things that we should, and then we rely on him, I think we just have to rely on him. We just have to make a decision to put our faith in him. Salvation's no different. The promise of eternal life is a sure thing. The promise of our food and raiment is a sure thing. We know in the Bible, righteous people, and Job, for example, lost his children, and a lot of people lost their children, got sick, had suffered a lot of things in the Bible, but we do not. Okay, now I can see you, Pastor McMurtry. Now I can't. So now I can see you. So we're gonna get Pastor McMurtry on here, but it looks like his internet. It looks like he's very far away in a very remote place because his internet's frozen. So, but our trust is in the Lord. So when you have faith in something, that means you don't have to figure out another way. You don't have to. I don't have to figure out another way to heaven. I don't have to do the things to get myself there. I am totally relying that the Lord, that God is the deliverer. That's his. He is referred to, I don't know how many times. God is our salvation. He's our deliverer. He will protect us and guide us and give us that everything. I mean, he will give us what we need, anything. Maybe not everything, but he can give us anything. And in the end, what it comes down to, he's going to deliver us from all of our enemies. And that could be, as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego says, hey, if we have to go through the fiery furnace, then so be it. My God is able to deliver me even from that. But if not, I've already purposed in my heart where I'm going to go with this. So the faith is that we're not looking for any other deliverance except for the Lord. We're not relying on our own strength, and we're not seeing our safety in any other place except for that the Lord will keep us.
All right, we got another call?
Do we?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, hello. Actually, my name's Chris Wellman. I live in about, an hour and a half east of Cincinnati. I work in a small hospital, and I just thought you guys might be interested on kind of what's happening in small-town America's hospitals, how we're kind of doing testing and so forth.
Sure. What's your name?
My name is Chris Wellman. I live about an hour and a half east of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, cool. Do you go to any of the churches that in that area? Are you going to Baptist church?
Yeah, I go to Victory Baptist Church. I've been out a couple times to Knoxville, Tennessee, and visited, with All Scripture Baptist Church, and I was able to make it out recently last October to the Cincinnati soul winning marathon that Pastor Mejia and when he came out, and we did some soul winning out there. It was a lot of fun. It was good to be with everybody.
Cool. So tell us what's going on.
Okay, so yeah, just a normal day right now is we're coming in. I work in the laboratory, and so when we show up for work, we're having to come in through. They've only got a few doors that they keep unlocked, so they're really restricting access. Not anybody can just come in, even to see their relatives. I think you're allowed to have one caregiver come in. It's you need to have testing done, but all the employees, we have to have our temperatures taken each day, and they ask us to make sure we're not feeling bad. If you have a temperature, you're going to be sent home. So that's from the employee standpoint. Once you go to work, your day is, almost like a normal day, except we're kind of fighting to find supplies and make sure that we've got everything that we need in order to test, even for things that people come in for, a heart attack or something, they're going to have blood work done to test to make sure that their cardiac enzymes are, not elevated and so forth to rule those things out. It's not that we have a shortage, it's just the supply has been delayed.
Hey Chris,
so
what's your job there?
I work in the hospital laboratory.
In the lab? What kind of labs do you what kind of lab tests are you running?
It's a clinical laboratory where people who are sick, you come in through the emergency room, people are going to have blood work done, or they're going to have if you got the flu or something, we're going to collect specimens from you, take them back to the lab, and do testing and see if we can help diagnose.
So is the testing done there, like strep throat, that kind of stuff, or?
Exactly. Yeah.
What kind
now
of?
the coronavirus
tell us about the testing and what's happening with people who are being tested for the coronavirus. Or
okay, it really depends on the circumstance. So The most interesting thing is how we're handling patients who are coming from doctor's offices. So, say you got a doctor's office that's in a community, and they're sending you to the lab or to the hospital for testing. So what's happening is if they're suspected of possible coronavirus, the physicians are filling out a form called a patient under investigation form. They call it PUI for short, and where they basically ask these patients have you traveled anywhere? They're trying to assess what their risk level is. They're asking them about their symptoms, and this form has a front and a back side.
I mean, now specifically more because we got a lineup here, so right down to the point. What are they testing to give somebody a positive test result?
Okay, so they're doing once the patient comes in, they're doing just a nasopharyngeal specimen, so a swab that goes in through your nose.
Uh-huh.
And we are doing a test called a RP2 panel. It stands for Respiratory Panel 2. It tests for 21 different organisms that cause respiratory illness. And none of those tests will confirm the coronavirus COVID-19 test. But if all of those tests are negative, then that specimen gets sent to a big laboratory called Laboratory Corporation of America, and they're doing the genetic test for it.
It's a genetic test. They're looking for a genetic
they're actually
marker.
testing for the actual DNA of the organism.
Cool. I'm going to put you on pause real quick, Chris. I'm going to introduce Pastor Tommy McMurtry. He's the pastor of Liberty Baptist Church there. Give me liberty. There in Rock Falls, Illinois. Pastor McMurtry, good to see your face. I'd like to hear what you got to say today.
So can you hear me?
I hear you, sir.
Excellent. All right. I have trouble with Skype. You'll have to forgive me. And then I'm on a different computer than normal, so took me a little bit, but doing good. We're about 3.5 hours into quarantine, and I'm already getting the jitters, but that's all right.
So are you fasting as well?
No, I've actually ate quite a bit. I'm not allowed to get out. I'm not, they closed down all the gyms and everything. I've got all this panic food stocked up here, so I'm probably gonna be getting pretty fat over the next couple of weeks. I'm a little worried about that. So even if I don't get corona, my health's in trouble.
Yeah. So what's the order that they've that you're given currently?
Well, I mean my tribulation protocol.
Yeah. Well, we know we're at level 1, or does this have advanced to level 2?
Yeah. No, we're still at level 1, and because I'm at level 1, I got to be careful what I say. I'm probably going to have a lot to say about this after it's all said and done. But let me just give everyone a piece of advice out there if you're trying to figure out what to do. Now, in Illinois, when I listened to the governor's speech and talking about the executive order, one of the things they talked about is how local law enforcement is what's going to be basically checking up on all these things. And so I checked with local law enforcement, just kind of see how they are planning on handling things. And let's just say I kind of liked what I heard. So I got some good information there that's going to be very helpful. So I'm pretty happy about that. So I'm feeling really good about tomorrow and looking forward to Sunday. So we'll see what happens. But
so what's the order specifically? They say as of a certain time, you have to everybody's just staying indoors like curfew?
Yeah, pretty much. It's just like a stay in residence order. So it's like at 5 o'clock, they don't want you going anywhere unless it's to.
All right, Paul, we just lost Pastor McMurtry here on the trusty iPad, which has crashed again. Can you hear me?
Yeah, not a worry. So, Jason, Pastor Robinson, we're just going to finish up here with you so we can get Pastor McMurtry. Is there any final thoughts you wanted to say?
To fear not and trust in the Lord, and basically just roll with the punches as far as everything that's going on, and yeah, that's all. That's pretty much all I got to say. That's my sermons tomorrow is going to be fear not and adapt, be adaptable. So
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and it's been a good conversation. Thank you so much.
yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we have the caller on the line right now, and so we'll go back to that caller, Dustin.
Hey, Chris, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, cool. So, what else do you want to tell us?
I was talking about, the testing that we was doing. I was talking about the specimen was collected. What I find kind of interesting right now is that patients who were coming from the doctor's office, though, they aren't allowed even in the facility, but we're still able to test them. And the way that they do that is the doctor's basically giving them a phone number to call. And so when they get to the parking lot, they call into the hospital registration department. And so, they're registering them over the phone, and then they'll call us into the laboratory to let us know, hey, there's a patient. And then they give us the paperwork, and we order up the testing that I was talking about
So
earlier.
how many of these patients have come through your hospital? At what rate?
We live in a rural area, so I believe at this point, those who have come in specifically from doctors' offices would be in between 10 and 20. Now, there's been a bunch of patients come in, just 10 or 20 at this point, that are coming from their doctor's office.
Because
they've been seen by their doctor.
They've been seen by their doctor, and they've been seen by their doctor, and the doctor says, "I think you need to go, maybe get tested for this coronavirus." Is that how? That's pretty much the series of what's happened. And so when somebody comes into the hospital directly to the emergency room, there's only one way for them to get in, and then they're basically stopped if they just try to show up.
Yeah. There's like one entrance to the ER. They've posted a healthcare worker, and a couple days I've even seen a police officer there, just kind of trying to make it so not too many people are going to come in and maybe infect some of the sick patients who are already there.
So how many people have you stuck the thing up their nose and come back and run the test, and then taken their sample and sent it off to the other facility to have the DNA test done?
Let's see, I'm going to give you an estimation because I don't have the exact numbers. I came back to work I've been off for a couple weeks, and I came back to work last Monday, I believe, and we've been doing about, I'd say, around 10 tests a day for this respiratory 2 panel. And like I said, we are a very small community, small hospital. So, in a big city, they're going to be doing a whole lot more testing. But my area, like I said, is very rural. The patients who are coming from the hospital, they're actually, we're going outside to actually get their sample while they're in their car. Mm-hmm. And then we bring it back in, and then they go back home, and they're waiting to be told what to do. But if all of those results that are negative, like on the panel that we do that tests for 21 different bacteria or viruses, if it comes back negative, it goes on to that big laboratory, and it takes about 4 to 6 days to get those results back.
So you haven't had any results really back because you've only been back to work 2 days.
Oh yeah. We've seen some patients come back, and nobody has come back positive at this point in our facility.
Let me ask you real quick. Okay, so they're running 21 different things. They stick it up their nose. They come back, and then you're taking these samples and you're doing your test using your laboratory methods, right? You got your white coat on and your gloves, and I can see it, and I'm in the scene. And so, what are these mostly coming back as, generally, just for a regular layman person? People are like, hey, I'm not feeling well, I've got something going on. They go into the lab, they come back. What's it coming back? One of 21 things. It could be this strain of flu or that strain of flu.
I'm seeing still a lot of influenza A and B.
Okay.
Then there's other viruses that we've actually detected, and one of them is called an enterovirus. The virus for the common cold, it's also coming back positive, and
like the rhinovirus or something. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's the rhinovirus, enterovirus.
Okay.
So we've seen some weirder things come up positive, like something called a human metapneumovirus. So I mean, people are really sick, but they're not referring any of those patients on that have had something that comes up because they feel like, okay, this makes sense for their symptoms. What I don't understand is, can a person have a dual infection? Can you have the common cold and the COVID-19? In that case, I don't know. They're not having any further testing done. So I don't know if that's a chink in the armor.
Yeah.
But those decisions were made, I think, by the Ohio State Health Department.
So as a Christian, Chris, what's your take on this whole thing? Like, okay, because a lot of this discussion, obviously, we were really grateful for your firsthand testimony as far as what's happening in the emergency rooms and even the laboratories, and that you're able to give people your witness as far as that. Now, what's your take on the lockdown and the measures they're going to in putting people, on curfew, locking things down, closing down businesses? What's your opinion, just as a guy who goes to church and believes the Bible?
Yeah. I'm obviously worried about what's going to happen after this is all done. But currently, as we speak right now, I don't feel like any rights have been infringed upon, in the sense that every facility they're closing on their own volition, and I can't go in and sit down in a restaurant would be like the only thing. I can still go grocery shopping. But honestly, I live my life almost like I do go soul winning and stuff, but I'm not a very social person. I don't go to parties. I got a family. I got a wife. I've got 2 children, and I'm pretty much a homebody. And so my life isn't really being affected right now, and I think it's actually good, some of the stuff that's happening. But I do worry that that they're going to use this as a power grab, and I do believe that when you're talking about things like the great falling away, and I've heard a lot of people talk about things that have made a whole lot of sense today and yesterday, and I can see how in a situation where we have a society today where people are falling away from the truth, they are ready now for the next step. And you know what? This virus, it really hits the older population. And the older population are actually, in my opinion, less likely to fall away from the truth, in the sense that, they've probably grown up in a household with traditional values. And when I think of the great falling away, I'm thinking of, generations passing and new generations that don't know the Lord.
Right.
They're starting to then take over, mm-hmm. and they don't trust the Lord.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting.
It's not like people know the Lord and then stop believing, right? So there's just people who don't. It's just that people stop doing the work, and they stop sowing the word, and it's not in anybody's. It's not in the front of people's minds anymore. It doesn't have a place in society, and so therefore people just let it kind of atrophy. But thanks for calling in, Chris. We're gonna take a call real quick. Yeah, talking about the queers. We don't want to go down the road with the queers right now, but that's another show. We'll schedule that for later in the week. But we got Pastor Tommy McMurtry. I want to get on the line with him again, Chris. So thanks for calling in. God bless you. And pay attention, subscribe here to Framing the World. Pay attention to when we're doing these call-in shows, because we're going to be visiting this again as things develop. And so we'd love to have you call back and let us know what the most recent update is. Would you do that next time we're on?
He's long gone.
All right. Well, he heard me, I hope. Pastor McMurtry.
Hello.
All right. Have you heard of anybody going and getting tested?
I have not. So we've got one case in Whiteside County. I think that was from almost a week ago. And I just looked at the map again, the updated statistics. And for the state as a whole, they have not gone. They're still not moving up very fast at all. And there's still only one in Whiteside County. So that's good. I'm very thankful for that.
I'm a middle-aged guy. I don't even know if I'm middle-aged. I think I am. I think I could get a convertible and it would be justified. So I have never been tested for the flu ever in all of my years. So I don't even know. Like, we have people he's talking about who go into the hospital and have had these tests done. I think maybe when I was a teenager, I got the mono. I might have gotten strep before. But that's really when you're really like got the sore throat or something, or but that's when I was living under my mother's roof too. So
yeah, I used to get strep every year. I don't know if I've ever been tested for the flu, but the one thing I'm interested in Illinois though is I'm wondering how much testing is being done. I haven't seen the numbers for like the amount of tests to see if that's going up real high, but it really does seem like it's not spreading much out here. And there's already people kind of declaring victory for what the governor's done, even though they were like literally declaring victory before, the lockdown even went in place. So that kind of tells me that they're seeing this thing's not spreading. So I do think, I'm hoping this was an overreaction is all it is, but we'll find out. But again, though, so I've learned through things like this, it's good to contact your local authorities to see what they're doing about this stuff. Because just like what they're doing with sanctuary counties when it comes to bans on assault rifles and things, where the state can pass these laws, but then it's up to the local law enforcement to enforce it. Well, often they just don't. And I often, depending on what county you're in and what's going on in your county, if nothing's happening with this virus, they can pass these laws in your state. And if your local law enforcement isn't doing anything about it, then you might as well just, go on your merry way and do your thing. So when I see my local, government actually showing leadership and being reasonable, that actually makes me want to follow them. So it's like, if I continue to see them doing what I'm seeing them doing so far, that's going to tell me a lot. If eventually they come along and are like, hey, we really need you to shut down, then I would definitely, I think, be more likely to listen. So I was pretty encouraged after a conversation I had today with some leaders in our area. So that was good.
So tell me more about that. What was your take? What's quote something
well,
that they told you that was memorable?
Obviously, there was kind of a script that they had to stick to. But let's just say I got the impression that they're just not real worried about anything right now and aren't really planning on doing anything. So obviously, if something becomes a problem, I think they'll start doing stuff. I think they're going to be monitoring things. And if, things get out of hand, they're going to get involved. If all of a sudden the virus starts spreading in our area, I think they're going to do something. But in the meantime, while literally nothing is happening, they don't seem like they're planning on doing much. So I think that's good because, again, while they maybe should be doing some things in Cook County and in Chicago, we don't need to do those things out here. So it's looking like our town's showing some leadership. So I'm thankful for that. And I actually do have a lot of respect for our local leaders. There's been a lot of other things in the past where they have been really good in working with us and just acting like human beings. I love that about them. Maybe part of that's too just small town politics is probably a lot different than the big cities and things like that. But I don't know if you saw that video. I shared a video today that was really interesting because yesterday we were spending a lot of time talking about how we just don't know. We've never seen anything like this. But a pastor in Kentucky, and I don't know this guy, he put out a video, and I guess he did some research on the Spanish flu in 1917 and 18, seeing what they did back then. And back then, when that all went down, when most of us would agree we had a lot more freedom, they did all the same stuff. They were banned, they were ordering pretty much all the public businesses and things to shut down and stop, and even churches. And there were churches that defied the orders, and those churches ended up getting in trouble. And the government, when they went to court and things, the government they ruled against the churches. So, that tells me a little bit right now. I like how they years ago, and obviously the Spanish flu was way worse than anything we're seeing yet. But most of the churches did comply. The one he mentioned that didn't was a Catholic church, and it seemed like everybody pretty much got mad at them for going against it. So I thought that was really interesting. I liked hearing from the history of what people did who have experienced this very thing. So to me, that made me feel a little bit better because it does seem like the government is trying to hold back right now as far as getting control, at least on the federal level. And, and the thing is, if we go off a precedent, which they often do in judging things, well, our precedent as churches would be, well, maybe we should be supportive, maybe we should shut down. But then the thing we got to remember too, the courts often look at precedent when they're going to figure out how they're going to rule, and they might go back and look at how they ruled in those things 100 years ago and end up using that, which tells me that if I want to just really get stubborn with this thing and fight it and take it to the courts, I'm probably going to lose. I don't really know that this is the thing I want to have the big fight with.
Right. Well, plausible deniability goes a long way. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, how are you supposed to be put on notice for these things? So I don't know what our responsibility is. Are we obligated to tune into the radio and to turn on the TV and to take our orders from the radio station? Or if we just did the things that we would normally do when they came and they closed us down, and it's just like, well, I didn't know. It's like soul winning, and you knock on a no soliciting door. You see the sign, you like knock on the door and say, oh, you know what? I was looking at the welcome mat. I didn't see the, we already found Jesus and we're not buying cookies, or that guy, and then you can just be like, well, forgive me because I was just looking at the welcome mat. I just do what I normally do. I just wanted to talk to whoever's behind the door, and I didn't know who put up the sign. I didn't even notice the sign. I was too busy looking at the doorbell, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But and that's another thing. That's where the judgment of the pastor and the leadership of the pastor, that's why the people need to stand with the pastor and just submit to that authority and pray for the pastor to have wisdom and to know what church you're going to, and to know that the church is made up of you and where your faith is, and that the pastor is there. I believe God put the pastor in that role to minister to his people. So it's almost like you get the wife that God gave you because it's perfect. She's perfect for you. You might not even realize it, but that's what you get because God knows you better than yourself, right? So that's what I think. Right. So it's
I can answer the question too when it comes to like plausible deniability and stuff. Basically, all the government is required to do whenever they pass a new law is, they have certain, like locally, they have to like post in the newspaper. But how many people are reading the newspapers? They've got on their websites. At the end of the day, legally, if it's our responsibility to figure out what the laws are and things like that, and to pay attention. However, what it comes down to though most time though is what are they going to do when it comes to enforcing it? So once the law is made, they can kind of do what they want, and they can hold you responsible for not being responsible and paying attention. But most of the time, they're not going to do that. Most of the time when it comes to law enforcement, they often use judgment. And so sometimes they take advantage of their power. Sometimes they act like human beings, and if they believe that you're innocent and sincerely ignorant, they'll give you a break. And one thing I've just learned in our town, I've avoided a lot of potential conflicts and problems just by going to them ahead of time and just saying, hey, this is what we're planning on doing. What's going to happen? And the thing that I've learned from that is most of the time the police don't really care what people do. It's just when they start getting phone calls and whenever people start complaining, a lot of times they have to respond and they don't know what they're going into. So the thing is, I don't want our neighbors all being idiots and saying, hey, man, people out at that church, they're out there, they got a big crowd out there. They're, defying the government, and then they're kind of wondering what's going on. If they know ahead of time what's up, it completely affects how they handle things. And so I've always just, anytime we've done anything that I knew could be questionable or, misconstrued in the wrong way, I just talked to them ahead of time, and they have never given us a bit of trouble for anything. And that's kind of what I did today. And so, it looks like we're going to be able to, do what we want to do tomorrow without having any big problems. And, and the thing is too, our church isn't going to have, a crowd of 100 people there. We don't run that much on a good day, and we're going to be down significantly because, I have encouraged a lot of the folks to stay home, that have physical problems and are elderly and things. But, at the same time, I don't think we're putting anybody in danger by, having a service there, nor do our local law enforcement, I believe, think that we're putting anybody in danger. So
yeah, definitely. And we have an actual caller on the line that wants to ask you a question real quick, Pastor.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dominic.
Hey, Pastor. This is Dominic Baldessari from FWBC.
Who let him call him?
Hey, of course. I have a question here. I'm a felon, so I can't legally obtain a firearm until I jump through a bunch of hoops, and there's no way I can submit the paperwork for at least another year. So my question to you guys is, should I break the law and get a firearm in order to protect my family a little bit better, or should I just go ahead and, shack up with my buddies who have guns if it ever gets that serious?
That's easy. The best way you can protect your family is to protect them from the government. So, I encourage people, and especially too, if it's something, if you have a record, you do the crime, you do the time, it stinks. It's not like that is so much an assault on liberty, when in your situation, what, I messed up in the past. I've lost some of my freedom as a result of that. But the last thing you want to do is lose more freedom, because you're more likely to get in trouble, by the government than you are a bad guy in town. So, I encourage people, to do things legally if you can, because I like guns for protection, and I think it's unconstitutional. I think it's ridiculous that I've got to get a permit to conceal and carry, that I have to have an FOID card. I got to have documentation to prove my right to bear arms. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, at some point we got to realize we've just lost a lot of freedom in this country. And, what battlefield do I want to fight that on, And so I want to protect my family, and I think the government's the greater danger. So when I'm out in public, I'm not carrying. Now, it doesn't mean – if they wanted to get the ones out of my house and my home on my turf, we're going to handle that a little differently. But if I were you, I wouldn't try doing anything illegal.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for your time.
Dominic,
Yeah.
If I was in your situation, my wife would have a lot of guns.
There you
Unfortunately,
go.
my wife can't have a gun, so I'm like, what, do I get the crossbow or just hold out for the year?
Well, I got you, fam. If it breaks out, man, I got you, man. You just
All
come
right.
see me, because I have many things that nobody knows about.
My man.
Hey,
All right.
when it all goes down, we're all criminals anyway. Then
Right.
at that point, that's where you can, just depend on your buddies then. But we're not there yet, so.
Yeah, for
I
sure. I just
wouldn't.
thought it would be an interesting question.
Very good. Always. So Dominic was one of the ones that he's gonna. I don't know if he's gonna get back on the show with us, but calling random pastors. That's another thing. If you guys haven't seen already, Paul's done that on his other channel, Framing the World Live. So if you go over to youtube.com/Framing the World Live, I think it is, or just type in Framing the World Live into your YouTube search bar there, you can see a few dozen calls that we've had calling random pastors. Now, we've been calling specific pastors with this coronavirus thing, but it might be an interesting thing to call up some of these random pastors and ask them these questions. Maybe we'll throw that question in there next time. But Dominic did a great job and got on the phone with a couple of these pastors and really had some good episodes there with that. So check us out there on Framing the World Live, calling random pastors. And yeah, I don't know if we have anything else here, Paul. Did you want to go anywhere?
Yeah, I think we're going to close it down here for the day. I really appreciate everyone tuning in and listening, but we definitely want to do more of these live streams. I have one clip that I wanted to play that I really think is kind of scary. Well, not scary, but it just kind of shows where we're headed in this lockdown. So I'm going to play this clip, and I hope you enjoy this. Unfortunately, you guys will not be able to hear it. Pastor McMurtry, you won't be able to hear this, but it's about 3 minutes long, and then we'll come right back to you guys and close out for the night. Here we go.
Well, the businesses here on San Pedro Square are an example of what businesses should be doing. The bars and the restaurants here have been shut down, some of them for several days now. The county's shelter-in-place order is now about a week old, and the city and the police department say a lot of businesses are not complying. They have taken a light-handed and educational approach until now. San Jose police are quickly responding to violent crimes such as this assault case this afternoon, and now they promise to just as readily respond to violations of the shelter-in-place orders.
Those of you that know me, we're not going to stay educational for long if people aren't paying attention to this.
Police Chief Eddie Garcia read from a list of 56 non-essential businesses his officers found that have stayed open in violation of health department orders to shut down to slow the spread of coronavirus.
2 clothing stores, 9 hair salons, 6 barber shops, 8 smoke shops, 2 flower shops, 3 gyms, 1 sporting goods store, 1 video game store, 1 billiards hall, 1 gun store, 1 recycling center, 1 furniture store, 1 flea market, and 1 car wash.
Essential businesses that can stay open are places like grocery stores, laundromats, auto repair shops, and drive-through restaurants, but not vape shops like this one we found still open today. San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo urged neighbors to turn in violators to 311.
Yes, we're going to depend on the public, and no, it's not snitching. It's simply informing authorities to ensure that we can all be safe.
Some businesses are closed but appear to still be open because they left their open signs on, like this hair salon. Police say certain patrol cars on each shift are now designated as health order compliance cars. Their main job will be making contacts with businesses that should be shut down but aren't.
There's a lot of places that aren't operating under malicious intent. However, I mentioned a store right now, a billiards hall. Are you kidding me? I mean, I don't know how a billiards hall thought that they could be open through this time, right? So as we go through this educational perspective, education is going to turn into enforcement very soon.
And the police department says it will be going around and reminding businesses. If the businesses then continue to stay open, that's when the sanctions will be kicking in. Sanctions such as, in fact, here comes a patrol car right now. This may be one of the cars that we're talking about, just driving around the city, making sure that the businesses are closed. Now, the sanctions that businesses could receive could be things like health department violations, which could be very difficult to clear up, as well as citations, and there could be other sanctions as well. Reporting live in San Jose, Len Ramirez, KPIX 5.
All right, Len, thank you.
Well, I know you didn't hear too much of that, Pastor, but I did want to get your opinion on this lockdown.
Yeah.
Did you hear
Well,
it?
I could hear all of that, and it sounded like a parody. Where was that at?
That was in San
California.
Jose. Yeah, San Jose.
What? No, so it's not snitching; it's just informing the authorities.
Yeah.
But that's not
these
snitching.
are all small. All the businesses he read out are just small businesses just trying to make some money. I mean, like.
Yeah, a hair salon. Does a hair salon gonna have more than 10 people in most of the time? A billiard hall. Leave these people alone. Here's what they just need to do. If these businesses aren't going to follow the instructions, don't give them a stimulus check. If these people decide, hey, I just want to make my own money instead of, getting paid by the government, then, let them do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, to waste time on stuff like that, I think it's awful. And again, maybe if you're in an area where it's really spreading bad, you want to be careful on that. But the thing is, everybody knows what's going on right now. Everybody knows what's going on, and they know the risks. And I don't know. Boy, I don't want to be a jerk and just like go against stuff. I do want to try to help be a part of the solution. But good night. Sometimes you just got to say, well, if they don't like what they're doing, then you know what that town ought to do? It ought to just not give any business to that billiard hall anymore or that hair salon. But, I'm just going to be honest with you. My barber that I go to, it's a father and two sons. It's their own private business. I've been going there for years. I don't know what they're going to do right now during this time. And, if I went and drove by their place and it was open, I would go in there. I'd get my hair cut, and I would probably give them an extra tip that day. That's probably what I would do, because these people are just trying to make a living, and for police to be bothering them for something like that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I just really think, obviously I think this is going to blow over and this is not going to get too crazy here, but I think this is really just a good indication of what's going to come in the future and how easily they can crack down on everyone. And it's pretty interesting, and it's definitely a sign of the end times. But I appreciate you coming on, Pastor. Any final thoughts you wanted to say real quick before we close this down?
No, just keep praying and doing whatever you can do. Be willing to adapt, get out. Be willing to get out of your comfort zone. Now with things on lockdown out here, we're going to have to change some things up on Solning. Obviously, today was our last day going door to door, at least for right now. But we're talking about just we're not far from state lines. Maybe just crossing over state lines. Unless they and going where it's a little more free outside of Illinois, and then, unless they shut those down. So, every day we're learning more things. I learned a lot of stuff today that's given me some different perspective on things. I'll learn a few things tomorrow. So my opinion today may be completely different in a couple of days. So again, we're all learning. So be patient with your pastors, give them the benefit of the doubt, support them on whatever the decision is, one way or the other. Don't go he's doing to what another pastor is doing. We're all in different towns, different cities, different situations, and we've got different congregations, and we're all making judgments for, I think, what's best, for our churches as a whole. And there's a time to just be supportive, even if you don't really agree. And I think this is a great example of that. So be supportive right now. Don't be a pain in the neck.
Awesome.
That also goes just to say in just a generally in the community as well, because everybody's got different opinions of what's going on with this whole thing. So we're not on lockdown. I'm still going to church tomorrow. I'm planning on go to work tomorrow, but who knows? I'm still going to go to work on Monday. I mean, so I'm still going to head out there. But how we interact with people, I think it's very important that we just, that we be the light You know, and that's what we're commanded to do. I think we have to have a positive outlook. We still have to be able to, I think we should bring the peace of God with us and be, don't be spreading fear. That's the problem with a lot of this. You know, everybody's like, did you hear about this? And so many people dying and the number over here is this. And did you hear what they're doing over here? And this is happening over here. Yeah, those are all probably happening where they're happening. So there's a lot of things to be grateful and the opportunities that we have in what we're doing. So God can still use us in these situations. We can still be a blessing to people wherever we go. And I think it's important that that we keep a level head around these things. So I think we have to be responsible to pay attention to where we're going in our own thoughts and how we spread our response to other people. So I think it's just really good to be a blessing. And so talking about the community, and so who knows? They could lock down our street, so or if they could close down my barbershop, or those types of things. So when we in those situations, I think it's important to try to live peaceably with all men, is what I'm trying to say, and to be peacemakers in this whole situation, because this is just. If this is the beginning of the end, right, which is every day is the beginning of the end. It's the first day of the last day. How's it say? This is the first day of the rest of your life, right? So no matter what we're doing, we just have to make the decision. That's I don't know. That's just to be a blessing to as many people in these times as possible. So we're not dealing with everybody's a reprobate. We're not. Well, this is the police officer. We want to talk to the police officer. We want to let the police officer know, hey, we're not here to make your job any harder. How can I make it easier? I'm just a normal guy. I'm just trying to get through this whole thing. I'm not trying to be a pain in the neck. So I don't think anybody here is really. I don't think anybody's here chomping at the bit to when can I smash the windows and steal the TVs? So.
Well, awesome, guys.
Right.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you, Pastor, for staying on and doing this, and all the other pastors that tuned in tonight. We're going to try to do more of these live streams. I know we'll talk to different people, get different kind of looks on this issue, not just pastors, but also other people. So thank you, Pastor, for staying on. And there's a video I kind of want to end with. And it's a video I played at the beginning of yesterday's live stream. And I think that this video is really key to understanding the numbers, how they're skewing the numbers, the actual numbers. And so I really hope you pay attention to this video. Watch it. It's the best. He explains it so well. So here you go. Thank you guys for supporting us. Make sure to go over to our Patreon account and support us over there. And also just head over to Framing the World and check it out. There's a lot of different sales going on right now. You can support us over there. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Have a good night, and I really hope you watch and listen to this video. Thank you so much.
Finally, some new reporting is also coming out that supports what I've been saying now for over 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks now, telling you that the coronavirus numbers in terms of mortality and fatality are being skewed, and those numbers are driving panic, and the panic is driving lockdown, and the lockdown is driving a situation that we are headed towards that will have huge ramifications, again, for tens of millions of Americans. And we begin with the latest on the coronavirus, as the World Health Organization says that the virus does have a higher death rate than the flu, but is more difficult to transmit.
While many people globally have built up immunity to seasonal flu strains, COVID-19 is a new virus to which no one has immunity.
So the mortality rate for COVID-19, the disease caused by the coronavirus, is 3.4%. And that number is making headlines. But what most media is not going to tell you is that that number is also pretty crude and poorly calculated. The number does not include, get this, mild cases. They just left them out completely that do not require medical attention. That completely skews the numbers. So that's what I told you at that time, that the WHO numbers were that the mortality rate, the death rate associated with the coronavirus was as high as 3.4%. They say the seasonal flu, on the other hand, has a mortality rate of 0.1%. And when that report came out, all of a sudden, every single news outlet in the United States picks up that headline. The coronavirus mortality rate far deadlier than the flu, 3.4%. And they ran this headline everywhere. And the problem with it is, guys, that the number is not accurate. It's accurate in terms of how the WHO calculated the coronavirus mortality rate. But what's not accurate is using the same numbers to calculate the seasonal flu mortality rate. And if you use the same formula for both of those viruses, both the seasonal flu and the coronavirus, what you find is that the seasonal flu is twice as deadly as the coronavirus. Again, these are not based on my numbers. These are based on the numbers of the WHO. The problem is that so many people in the media are so lazy that when the headline comes out, coronavirus is more deadly than the flu, they all just run with it instead of sitting down and looking at the numbers and saying, okay, what's accurate here and what is not? So let me just explain to you how this works. When we talk about the flu, and I've been reporting on this as well, the CDC, again, not my numbers, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, based here in Atlanta, says that this year alone, 22,000 people have died in the United States from the seasonal flu. Now, let's take those numbers for a minute. Look at this chart. If you look at the 2019-2020 year, they said at the time that they put this out a couple of weeks ago, that the number of deaths from the seasonal flu in the U.S. was 22,000 people. At the same time, they said that the coronavirus in the U.S. was responsible for 69 deaths. Now, at the time, 69 people have died. As of the time of this recording, about 112 people have died here in the U.S. But let's use these numbers. So at the time the WHO puts these numbers out, they say 69 people in the U.S. have died from coronavirus, 22,000 people have died from seasonal flu. Now, look at this. They also say the number of confirmed cases through testing of the seasonal flu is 222,552. The number of confirmed cases for the coronavirus is 3,806. Again, this is the WHO. Then they also have the global numbers beside that, 173,316 at the time that they did this. Now, look at the second to last line and then the last line. Because if you listen to media and what they've been saying, and you listen to politicians and what they've been saying about how deadly the coronavirus is, then you would have heard the bottom line, which is this. The death rate per estimated cases, again, the death rate per estimated cases of the seasonal flu in the United States was 0.1%. The death rate for estimated cases in the coronavirus was not available because they didn't have estimated cases. So instead, you go to the death rate per confirmed cases. And they said coronavirus was at 2% and globally was at 4%. The global deaths, 4%, the US deaths, 2%, and they average them out and they say 3.4% is the death rate for the coronavirus. But look at the number right beside it, because these are the actual confirmed cases. So they used confirmed cases to come up with the numbers for the coronavirus, but they used estimated cases to come up with the death rate for the seasonal flu. Look at the confirmed cases for seasonal flu, and it's at 10%. So 10% of confirmed cases matches the death rate for the flu, 3.4% for the coronavirus. That means that the seasonal flu, if we're using an apples to apples comparison, guys, is twice as deadly as the coronavirus. So this idea that the coronavirus is this unbelievable plague-like virus of which there is no turning back, it's Armageddon, it's the end of times, is false. Now that doesn't mean that it's not dangerous. There are people who are dying from the coronavirus. That is a true statement. It is true that older people who have health complications and pre-existing health conditions can, and some of them have already died from the coronavirus. That is true. It is also true that has happened and happening right now from the seasonal flu. But we do not grind society to a halt over the seasonal flu. We do not stop people from working over the seasonal flu. We do not prevent people from going to school. We do not cause the economy. And when I say economy, I'm not talking about Wall Street. Who cares right now about Wall Street? I'm talking about the workers in America right now who are seasonal or service workers who right now can't go to work. because those people have been told stay home because it's a public health crisis and might find themselves not being able to pay rent next month, not being able to pay their mortgage next month because they don't have a job right now. They don't have income coming in. And then the answer from politicians is to say, well, we'll just send everybody a check. The sad truth of all that we're seeing right now is that, yes, again, coronavirus is a serious thing for the people who will be impacted by it. I'm not downplaying that. But we also have to recognize that the idea that everything in society must halt for a virus that has not been proven to be more deadly than other viruses in existence right now, and that again is half as deadly, it appears, from the WHO's numbers, half as deadly as the flu, well, that's just insanity. But if you reported the story that way, people would say everything we're doing right now makes no sense at all.